Welcome, everyone, to today's Quantum Marketplace. I'm Celia Merzbacher. I'm Executive Director of the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, or QED-C. And I want to welcome all of you to today's program, which is a very exciting one. It's in an area that I think we all appreciate as being critical to advancing quantum technologies for all application areas for quantum sensing, quantum networks, and quantum computing. And we're very pleased to have 5 QED-C member companies represented on today's program. I just want to remind everyone that Quantum Marketplace is really about showcasing QED-C members, raising awareness about what's going on in the community. And we welcome those of you who perhaps aren't already engaged with QED-C to consider doing so. It's a great organization with something for everyone. But without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Saeed Pegahan from Toptica, who will be moderating and hosting today's program. So Saeed, over to you.
Thank you, Celia. Appreciate it. I'm also very excited about this panel discussion. And this is one of the topics that I believe last year it came up through the enabling technologies and Mark which was moderating. So I'm very excited. I get the opportunity to moderate in this panel and share this exciting field that has very broad applications covering not only for quantum computing, but also on the sensing. We have a very exciting panel here. But before introducing our panelists, I wanted to provide a quick introduction and motivation behind the session today, and provide a quick reminder and the agenda, and then follow up, passing it to our panelists. I'm going to quickly share my screen in a moment. So as Celia mentioned, I'm an application scientist at Toptica. I've been with Toptica over 2 years or so, focusing on laser referencing and optical frequency comb and clock laser systems. And today's topic is photonic integrated chips for quantum computing and sensing. Quantum Marketplace, as Celia mentioned, is basically is a platform that facilitates collaboration and partnership in quantum-related technologies. It's a very, very interesting platform that a variety of companies from both quantum hardware and software, they have given a very broad talks. You can really think about it as a tech talk related, that you can learn so much on, not only on the technology, but also on the business side. Highly recommend, if somebody hasn't check it out, either check out the YouTube channel or on the QED-C webpage. And for a quick reminder for today, so the presentation from our panelists is a 5-minute presentation segment, and then feel free to write your questions in a chat for participants, and we will do our best after going through the series of prepared questions to address your question. And the session would be recorded. We will kindly ask our panelists to turn on their camera while they're presenting, and the rest of the panelists, they can turn off the camera while the other presenter is sharing their screen. So I wanted to quickly provide a quick motivation behind the panel today. As I mentioned, the talks is a 5-minute slots, and then we will go through a series of questions from all the panelists. So as you may know, as the quantum technologies have been maturing, the scalability and stability and complexity remains one of the bottlenecks. And the integrated photonics over the past few years have shown a lot of potentials as they offer a path toward miniaturization, robustness, and boosting scalability that you can find their use case footprints in quantum computing, communication network, and sensing areas. And very recently, I came across very interesting publication from Sandia, this cartoon graph that kind of really at high level and kind of the path that this field is going. This is shown like a photonic integrated chip that basically is like a photonics platform that basically can deliver various of components, including modulator, filters, detectors, and so on and so forth, toward basically providing and delivering the light for applications such as interferometry, various beams such as Raman, repumping, cooling, and so on and so forth. So that's a very, very exciting platform, very strong platform. And having said that, cross-cutting challenges exist, noises, loss in a fiber to chip coupling, and etc. And these basically challenges require joint innovation across foundries, quantum computing developer, photonics, and laser manufacturing as well. So I'm very excited that we have very diverse and exciting panel, and very much looking forward to hear their thoughts and basically from their technical expertise to see where basically these challenges, how they're getting addressed, and what is the best recommendation they have and basically to build up this ecosystem and cross-functional effort for a PICs development for scaling the quantum computing hardware. So without further ado, I wanted to start with John Jarman. John is the US technical lead at No Quantum, a Cambridge, UK-based startup focused on building a quantum networking hardware and needed to achieve a fault-tolerant quantum computing at the scale. John joined No Quantum from University of Cambridge in 2021 and has been focused on developing the photonic hardware underpinning the entanglement fabric since then. Most recently, he moved to Los Angeles to establish a new quantum presence in US in October. John, the stage is yours.
Great, thank you very much. I'm US technical lead at New Quantum, and I'm going to introduce you all to what we're doing at New Quantum to build photonic systems for distributed quantum computation, creating individual entanglement links between processes to create what we call the entanglement fabric. So as I was saying before, we span out to the University of Cambridge in 2018, and we're now a multidisciplinary team of 60 people, mainly based in Cambridge in the UK. Our technical team spans 9 disciplines from theory to photonics through mechanical engineering, which allows us to build technology for the full quantum networking stack. And we've also recently expanded into the US, opening an office in Los Angeles. We're building photonic technology because we see that there is a huge potential in quantum computing to help us model more complex and more highly correlated systems than can be modeled by classical computers. And this will open up new applications from drug discovery, material science, decarbonization, all the way through to enabling better AI models. The most transformative applications rely on a very large number of error-corrected qubits, requiring potentially hundreds of thousands to millions of physical qubits. And this is very hard to do in one single quantum processing unit with the technology that we have today. Our model for building a large-scale system that can begin to address these problems is to break the large million-qubit computer down into smaller pieces. We call this distributed quantum computing, and that means taking a monolithic processor and connecting it to many others using photonic interconnects. This is a pattern we see in classical computing as well, where the largest supercomputers are built in a modular distributed way. And our entanglement links are fundamentally built on photons because photons are natural carriers of quantum information. They're easy to move around, hard to interfere with, and relatively easy to process and ultimately to detect as well. Our architecture for photonic networking of quantum processing units is in 2 parts. So first, we need to extract photons from the matter qubits inside the processors. And then we need to route the photons through a switching fabric and finally into an array of Bell state measurement devices that can perform a joint measurement on the 2 photons, projecting the matter qubits into an entangled state. On the photon extraction side of the equation, so down at the bottom here, we need to ensure that this part of the process happens with the highest possible efficiency. To do this, we have built a qubit to photon interface based around our optical microcavity technology. Our cavities have a finesse of up to 200,000, and we can stabilize their length to within 80 picometers, which is needed to ensure the photons coming from different QPUs are indistinguishable. Our investment in the technology at the qubit to photon interface level helps to ensure that we can reach success rates that don't necessitate quantum memory elsewhere in the system. And we've built this system for both neutral atoms and for trapped ion qubits. Once photons have been extracted, the next step is to route them through a switching fabric and perform a Bell state measurement to produce the entangled link. We call this a dynamic entangler, as it allows dynamic reconfiguration of the entanglement graph that is produced between different QPUs. We have also developed a scalable control system that can react to heralding events in real time and distributes highly accurate timing using CERN's White Rabbit protocol. And we've implemented this in hardware suitable for testbed deployment as the center of our 4-node quantum network. Currently, fiber optic components can be used for this small scale system, but to get to a fault-tolerant machine, we'll need technologies that can scale better than that. That's why we're also developing a thin-film lithium niobate photonic integrated circuit that will replace the optical module in our quantum networking unit, allowing us to scale to larger channel counts and larger numbers of QNUs in a utility scale machine. So what challenges do we face in developing the photonics for this application? Well, the first is preserving the high fidelity provided to us by trapped ion or neutral atom QPUs. While our work on distributed error correction tells us that the non-local link fidelity can be a lot lower than the fidelity of local gates, which would be in the sort of 4 to 6 nines region, we still need to achieve a 99.5% fidelity across our entanglement links. Our first gen QNU already exceeds this threshold, and our photon extraction and entanglement scheme will maintain this across real QPUs. The second challenge is maintaining a high rate to ensure that decoherence does not limit the performance of the computing system. Again, we can look to quantum error correction theory to tell us how fast we need to be, and the answer is that a success rate around 25 kilohertz should exceed requirements. We also want to overshoot that by as much as we can, so we're targeting a 1 megahertz attempt rate. Then, to ensure that as many attempts as possible are successful, we need to address all the sources of loss and latency in the system in the modulator's detection system and minimize latency in the control system as well. And of course, packaging is an important factor, as fiber chip coupling is an important source of loss. And we have additional requirements, things like cryogenic compatibility. I've included an image of the sort of system in our lab that we need to package our PICs to integrate with. And finally, I'd like to talk about some of the technologies that we are using to build our photonic integrated circuits. Our switching fabric requires high speed and compatibility with 1 micron photons naturally emitted by the ion traps. Therefore, thin-film lithium niobate is a really enabling technology that allows us flexibility around operating wavelengths while maintaining high speed and extremely low on-chip losses. We are also developing on-chip superconducting nanowire detectors that offer us a scalable on-chip option towards the highest efficiency single photon detection. And all of this is, of course, available to us in a platform that is inherently manufacturable and scalable, allowing us to leverage technology developed for the semiconductor industry and to make best use of foundry services that are becoming available for these new photonic materials. I hope that was an interesting introduction to photonics at New Quantum. Apologies for the unstable internet connection. Please feel free to reach out to us to talk about collaborations and if you've got any more questions about what we're doing.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you for a great talk. And yeah, no worries for the connection or disconnections. I'm happy that we could go through your presentation successfully. All right, our next panelist is Nathan Gemelke. He's a leading physicist and a co-founder and the chief technology strategist of QuEra Computing, a quantum computing company based on neutral trap atoms. And Nate got his PhD from Stanford University, where he studied ultra-cold atom gases before entering the private sector. He was assistant professor at Pennsylvania State and postdoctoral fellow at University of Chicago. At QuEra, Nate leverages his extensive research background to spear the development of the innovative quantum processor based on scalable neutral atom technology, driving significant advancement in the field of quantum information and computing science. Feel free to take it away, Nate.
All right, can you hear me? All
yes.
Right. But very much like our last speaker, what I have to talk to you about today really has 2 parts. Our core technology at QuEra Computing is really around building quantum computers, quantum processing units, built with very good qubits. These are neutral atom qubits, rubidium atoms, whose electronic states are really used to manipulate quantum information. And we use PICs, integrated photonics tricks, mostly for the control of these neutral atom qubits. So our core product is really the neutral atom quantum computer. And you can see a version of that quantum computer up in the right-hand corner of the screen right now. Each one of those dots that you see in that picture is a neutral atom qubit that we use. That's a single atom that's scattering about 1,000 photons each into a CCD camera. And that's what we're using to read out the states and the location of the qubits in our quantum computer. So I'm going to tell you about both of these things today. But first, just to give you a sense of the company, QuEra Computing, very much like New Quantum, we started in about 2019 and we spun out of university research. In our case, predominantly research labs at Harvard and MIT, in the research groups of Misha Lukin, Marcus Greiner, Vladan Vuletic, and Dirk England. We've grown since that time. This slide is actually a little bit out of date. We're now well past 80 scientists and engineers. We're up to about 100 people or so. And it really is a family, more than a team. But the technology that we work on really started around 2015. We started the company in 2018 to spin out and commercialize that technology built on neutral atom quantum computers. And we've really had two kind of non-incremental breakthroughs in how we view this technology. One was just being able to produce large arrays, large for the time, of 50 qubits or so in 2017 and really manipulate them with high gate fidelities and be able to show that neutral atoms as a qubit really were starting to come into their own. But just a few years later, we actually discovered a new technique in this technology, which is that we can actually shuttle atoms around in real time and in real space. And I'll show you in just a moment how we do this using optical tweezers to manipulate the atoms and still preserve their quantum coherence. So that allows us to make processors where we can really get all-to-all connectivity, bring any two qubits in the processor together, and implement a relatively fast Rydberg mediated gate. So this is the technology that we're working on. These are the types of processors that we're building here. And I'm just going to give you a good sense of what the processors look like in a single slide here. What we actually do is shown in the upper left-hand corner of this screen. What we do is move the atoms around in real time. We use the internal electronic states, both the hyperfine levels of an atom and also the excited Rydberg states of an atom to implement single and two qubit gates respectively. And actually, I wanted to show you a good sense of how we do this in real time. In the bottom right-hand corner is a video of actual single qubits that we're moving around, shuttling in an experiment. And every time you see two get close together and circled by a red circle there, what we're doing is implementing a two qubit gate using the Rydberg entanglement that we can generate by exciting the atoms all the way up into the excited state spectrum so that they interact at a distance, but not too long of a distance. And that way we can implement these kind of localized gates. So what you're seeing in the movie there is actually implementing the Tor code on a Tor, so we can actually use this to do things like error correction as well. But we do very well with these kinds of qubits. We get single qubit fidelities that are in 3 and 4 nines, and we can even get 2 qubit gate fidelities that are 99.5 or so in the state-of-the-art experiments that we're doing now. But I should say that, this moving atom architecture really allows us to make optimized kind of zone architectures where we are really doing all of the basic elements of operation of a quantum computer in an optimized kind of geometric sense, which is to say that we have regions that are devoted to memory for qubits. We have regions that are devoted just to entangling them, but we also have specialized readout zones where we're moving the atoms down spatially, removed from the rest of the atoms, so that we can scatter photons out on them and not destroy the quantum information that we have in the rest of the processor. So this is a very powerful type of system, but to really reach the utility scale, we do have to scale them quite a bit larger. And as we scale up a quantum computer, we also have to scale up the control. So that can be a very difficult problem. Once you get up to the point that you have, say, 1 million qubits in your quantum computer, we're pretty far from this now, but we're starting to invent the tooling for this. And this is where the PICs come in. So the real question is, how can we implement these types of systems with very high clock speeds, moving the atoms a little bit less because that's somewhat slow operation. And all of those roads lead to scaling up the number of degrees of freedom of optical control that we have in the quantum computer. So one of the teams that we have at QuEra Computing works on integrated photonic circuits, and they have worked together with Sandia National Labs in silicon nitride, active silicon nitride context to be able to make integrated photonic chips that we can actually scale the control of turning on and off light beams to deliver light pulses to the atoms to control their internal states. And so, the technology stack looks a little bit like what you're seeing on the screen right now. You can see that there's some silicon nitride as a wave guiding material. There's also some aluminum nitride there to introduce piezoelectric or stress optic effect to actually perform the modulation. So we built chips of this type. In fact, we can target a pretty wide range of wavelengths, even all the way down to short wavelengths on the kind of 400 nanometer scale, all the way up into the micron or so. Good power handling, good on-off contrast, all of those types of things, and good modulation speeds of in the range of 10 to 100 megahertz as well. So you're seeing one of those chips kind of flash in real time here up in the right-hand side of the screen. This is actually an array of Mach-Zehnder interferometers that are turning on and off the light, and you're seeing it switch on the right there. So just to give you a sense, 400 nanometer to about a micron or so wavelengths. We can handle about 100 milliwatt of power. World record contrast in the visible spectrum here, 75 dB of optical isolation on and off ratio, and also 200 nanosecond rise time. So this is a very good tool. It should work for neutral atoms, but it should also work for other systems too, like ions and so forth. And with that, these are things that we do work with other companies on quite a bit. So please feel free to contact us, discuss a wide range of collaboration opportunities. If these optical switches might work for your qubits as well, feel free to give us a call and we'd love to talk about it.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate that. What a wonderful talk. There's also a question from our audience, but I'll make sure that we will address that as we go through the question series.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Thomas. Thomas, firstly, is a founder of Light Integration Technology, a startup developing a heterogeneously integrated PIC platform for quantum sensing, timing, and communication. Thomas brings a broad experience from a startup, defense, and corporate R&D, and have led programs in quantum defense and biomedical fields. His prior roles include principal, a PIC designer at a Rockley photonic sensor engineer at Lockheed Martin on laser and RF photonic system, researcher at IBM, Watson on optical transceivers, and photonic scientist at Freedom Photonics on tunable and high power lasers. At LIT, he focuses on integrated best-in-class photonic components to move quantum systems from lab to deployment from agencies like NASA, Navy, and Space Force. Thomas, feel free to take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. And just a quick disclaimer, heads up, if you hear kids in the background, I'm really sorry about that. The nanny hasn't showed up, and I'm alone at the moment.
No problem.
All right.
No problem.
So, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for for the opportunity to talk to you all today. I'm the founder, CEO of Light. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for for the opportunity to talk to you all today. I'm the founder, CEO of Light Integration Technologies, and feel free to contact me at my email address there as soon as it's up and running again. All right. So Light Integration Technologies, I'll just quickly give a brief background on us. We're a very early stage startup, started last year with teams in Seattle, Washington, and Santa Barbara, California. We're currently bootstrapped, operating on government contract work and contract work for our partners, but doing fairly well for being so young. And so then we're hiring. So please contact me if you're an expert in any of the things that I talk about today. We're a vertically integrated developer of PIC-based products, primarily focused on scalable hybrid platforms. With DFMA in mind from the start. My background is developing PICs and laser systems for various applications, not just quantum. And so then we are pursuing developments for other applications, but in the quantum space, we're focused on developing and manufacturing PIC-based products that enable quantum systems in the photonic-enabled space based on requirements that we're made aware by experts in the field. We're not quantum experts, and so then so we have a lot of collaborations with world-class leaders in that space, and they tell us the problems that they need solved, and we solved it. So that being said, like most PIC developers, we reduce the swap, alignment sensitivity, fragility, and the cost of quantum photonic systems. And the primarily tackling a few of the problems that we're made aware of by specialists in the field. Let me see if I have it on this next page. 1 second. Come on, buddy. All right. Mostly we're laser systems experts, and so then we handle a lot of the issues that we're aware of on the source side, developing ultra-narrow line width lasers, watt level CW lasers, tunable lasers on chip, lasers that are rugged for harsh environments and designed to be optical feedback tolerant at various wavelengths from the NIR to NUV. We also have current developments funded through a lot of our contract work in developing on-chip optical isolators that are compact, low loss, low power, and CMOS compatible on chip. We develop in collaboration with our NIST partners low loss PIC interfaces to atomic vapor cells for trapping and cooling atoms for applications that require it, clocks, inertial sensors, computers. And all of this in order to develop deployable laser systems with focus on the source, but also the electronics and packaging for stabilization and control and operation in harsh environments. To do this through our programs and internal R&D, we're using heterogeneous and hybrid integration schemes to integrate best-in-class platforms for the applications of interest for you guys, quantum applications. We primarily focus on low-loss silicon and silicon nitride platforms for our routing. A big focus of ours is developing 3.5 electro-optics for gain modulation and detection with DFMA in mind. Like I said, piezo MEMS-based optical isolators on chip, as optical isolation is a big problem in quantum systems. The frequency requirements of quantum systems is much more stringent than telecom, as you're all aware already. And so then this is a big deal. We also have a number of programs developing PIC platforms integrating various nonlinear materials on chip required for those applications, liquid crystal-based compact modulators, thin film lithium niobate modulators integrated into our multi-level silicon nitride PIC platform, trying to develop thick silicon nitride and integration of phase change materials. And then, like I said, through a few different integration schemes, depending on the application space, different schemes are optimal based on the performance required. And like I said, we're very early stage, started last year, but we have programs working with the DoD and NASA, just my wrap-up slide. We're a bunch of PIC experts. We're not experts in the field of quantum, so we really would like to hear from people needing partners like us. We want to partner with end users, systems integrators, tier 1 suppliers, and experts in the field, as well as the developers in academia and industry for state-of-the-art photonics that will enable them. Like I said, we're hiring. Please check out our website. I'm trying to post all the positions there. And feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions or want to talk about collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. And that's one of the main actually point also opening up a collaboration between hopefully our panelists. And I love to see the overlaps and discussions between both the photonics developer and quantum computing. And so it's very wonderful talk so far. Our next speaker is Adam Henniger. Adam is a product manager at Toptica Photonics. Adam studied physics at the University of Iowa and earned his PhD at University of Rochester Institute of Optics. There he studied communication and biosensing in photonic integrated circuits and high-power fiber amplifier. Adam began his career at Toptica in scientific cell before moving into product management and application science. He has led the development of Toptica products, and he's the author of several publication, conferences, presentation, and patents. Adam, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Said. I'm going to talk today about some integrated photonics projects at Toptica. Now, of course, Toptica is a laser company, so we're looking at putting lasers onto integrated photonics platforms. So let me dive in here. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is why should we use PIC lasers? And there's maybe two main advantages. One is that PIC lasers may give us the opportunity to provide lasers with specifications that you cannot otherwise get with existing technologies. First of all, of course, they offer a smaller package, but small lasers are available on other platforms as well, like DFBs and DBRs. But the other advantage that goes along with that smaller package on PICs is this opportunity to have a narrower line width. These advantages are going to be useful, particularly in applications that require both low swap and really high performance. So that could be field deployed clocks, gravimeters, Rydberg sensing, and so on. On the other hand, another big advantage of PICs is, of course, all of the components that everyone around the world are developing to put onto PICs. So this is what I call the integration advantage. Having your laser, light manipulation, frequency shifting, splitting, and so on, and maybe even physics packages all on the same chip that gives a high degree of integration. And this could have an advantage perhaps in lower cost, perhaps in lower power requirements. For example, particularly for the laser, if you need to get the light off of some chip or and then onto a chip and then maybe onto a modulator, then back out and so on. You have all these coupling losses in between. So having everything integrated could mean that you have fewer lasers or lower power laser power altogether. And of course, this is useful for kind of everything. You could have even smaller quantum sensors as you scale up quantum computers and so on, and you need many wavelengths and many lasers to address many qubits. Having a high degree of integration could be a big advantage. So more specifically on the spec advantage, I mean, Toptica offers a large range of lasers to get wavelengths in the visible and near infrared, all based on sort of making a tunable narrow line width laser around a laser diode. For a long time, we've offered external cavity diode lasers that rely on bulk optics to provide external feedback that allows you to get a tunable laser. These are our DL Pro and CTL platforms that give you wide tuning, narrow line width, and so on, so you can address any atomic transition. But these are big, bulky lasers. They cost, a fair bit of money. And particularly if we're talking about low swap applications, they're not going to be suitable outside of a laboratory. DFB and DBR lasers exist, but there are many gaps in wavelengths that they cover. It's pretty difficult to design these lasers to reliably reach the target wavelength every time you fabricate them. And so this investment to fabricate these lasers has really only gone into wavelengths where there's really a key application where that will be profitable. So this is 633 nanometers where Heine lasers exist, 780 because rubidium's a pretty widespread atom that is used. But you can't really get DFBs and DVRs at all wavelengths that might be useful, particularly for quantum computers or some sensors. And their line width can be pretty big, hundreds of kilohertz to a megahertz. In the last few years, Toptica's subsidiary Eagle Yard developed a mini ECL, which is an external cavity laser like the DL Pro, but it's all developed or packaged via micro optics. So you have very, very small feedback elements that feedback light to the laser diode. And these are very nice devices. They're already very small. They get pretty good line width. We can, in principle, develop them wherever there is a laser diode. So sort of the maybe 370 to 2 microns. They have a limited mode hop free tuning range. Like I said, the line width is pretty good, but maybe not suitable for extreme clock applications. And now we're investigating this new technology where people are using photonic integrated circuits to provide feedback to a laser diode. We've been looking at this for a couple of years now as well. Internally at Toptica, we have some funded programs where we're developing these lasers. And there's a potential to have a superior technology to the mini ECL because we can get potentially wider mode hop free tuning and potentially much narrower line width. So these are sort of the spec advantages that a PIC laser can provide if you just want to have a standalone laser. But I think that there are only a limited number of applications where that's going to provide a really big advantage. The big advantage is in integration. You can have this standalone product, but you could consider within a single package, sort of co-packaging or edge coupling multiple different PICs, gain material, sort of hybrid integration of many different components. But increasing integration is having a foundry that has some PDK where you can drop in a laser and modulators and physics packages and so on, ion traps maybe all onto the same chip. And I think that's the real promise that we're all working towards. But But so far, for the most part, people are demonstrating each of their individual components. And I think it remains to be seen whether that's going to be the real solution. The biggest problem in my mind with that is that if something breaks, then you throw out the whole thing. But we'll see. We'll see how that all comes together. But Toptica's efforts on integrated lasers, so far we've investigated two approaches. One is called a self-injection locked laser, and the other I'm calling a two-ring Vernier external cavity laser. In a self-injection locked laser, we use a Fabry-Perot laser diode, which means that this diode would laze on its own because it has reflections at the interface, at both interfaces. And then we provide this PIC, which basically provides feedback that self-injection locks the laser. Whereas in the two-ring Vernier external cavity laser, we use an AR-coded semiconductor optical amplifier and then provide feedback from the structure that you see here. The Vernier device we've investigated at 637 nanometers as part of a funded project. This is published at the link here. We have different configurations here, but in one configuration we saw very large mode-hop-free tuning, pretty good intrinsic line width on the order of hundreds of kilohertz, and on the order of 1 milliwatt power. We were able to get that with narrower line width below 10 kilohertz, a little higher power with a little sacrifice in mode-hop-free tuning range. In both cases, we could tune pretty much over the entire gain bandwidth of the diode with coarse tuning. And then in a few weeks at the laser, or actually in our Quantum World of Photonics booth in Munich, we'll be showing our demonstrator of a 780 laser. This has intrinsic line width below a kilohertz, so this can get to 778 nanometers, for example, for 2-photon rubidium clocks. It has pretty good mode-hop-free tuning. In free space, we have 30 milliwatts. In fiber, at least 10 milliwatts. You can see some performance specs here. So yeah, this will be at our booth in a couple weeks. Yeah, and that's basically what I have. Like everyone else, eager to hear about collaborations. This operating device we have at 780 nanometers. We're happy to bring it to people's labs and see if they see an advantage of having a relatively small laser with pretty narrow line width. Something that I should note here is that maybe many people have seen Toptica laser heads that all look to be about this big. So what's the point here? The main point here is that this laser head contains the packaged laser as well as all electronics. So this thing just plugs into the wall, and it's about the size of a small shoe. So we're pretty excited about that for low swap applications. So yeah, let us know.
Thank you, Adam. And yeah, make sure anybody wants to also connect with our panelists to record the email addresses that is there and to reach out to them, follow up the panel. Thank you for a great talk. Our last speaker of the panel is Stuart Kumber. He's a global head of OEM cell, has a 20 years track record working in photonics and semiconductor industries with graduate and PhD degrees from University of Nottingham. He spent first 10 years of his career working as a research scientist before joining a global semiconductor company as a technical sales director. Stuart joined Covesion in 2021 and is responsible for strategy development of their OEM business with a focus on solutions for quantum application, including sensing, timing, cryptography, and computing. Take it away, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Saeed, and thanks to QED-C for inviting me to take part in this webinar. I will start with the exciting news from our perspective that we were able to announce last week, which is that Covesion, based in Southampton in the UK, has joined forces with ADVR, who many of you may know, based in Bozeman, Montana, to combine our efforts in terms of technology development, product development across the nonlinear optical space. So we announced that last week. So what I've tried to do in the few slides I've got here is cover the activities, capabilities of both companies when it comes to quantum computing and sensing. Let me see if I can get that to progress. There we go. Right, so core technology. So both companies have a core competence in nonlinear frequency conversion and modulation based on a number of materials, these being periodically poled lithium niobate, magnesium doped lithium niobate, and KTP. And Our history, if you like, is in the development of these materials in a bulk form, whether that's a bulk crystal or a bulk waveguide, to address many of the applications and challenges people have mentioned already. We've developed those materials into packaged, bulk component devices. So through fiber coupling, through integrated heater and temperature control. And across the two of us, we've got a sort of a component level solution range covering everything from free space chips through to fiber coupled components, bulk modules. And actually, one of the things that we've been doing at Covesion itself is looking at locked laser systems for quantum applications. But key to us is being able to access the full, transmission window of whatever material we're working with, whether that be lithium niobate or KTP. So looking at, generating frequencies, performing modulation right across the visible through to the mid-IR. The sort of applications that we already supply solutions into, I've kind of divided out a little bit. You can think of classical frequency conversion used in wavelength converting lasers. Adam just mentioned the inability to get a diode laser that works at every conceivable wavelength a quantum application might need. One of the ways you can then reach those wavelengths is through frequency conversion, through second harmonic generation, some frequency, difference frequency generation. So we've got a long history in working with one of the laser manufacturers for the supply of these sorts of crystals. In the quantum arena, obviously quantum frequency conversion has become of great interest. Many of the quantum modalities, whether it's a quantum computing or quantum sensing modality, are based on requiring wavelengths around the visible, whether that's an ion, a trapped ion, a neutral atom, a nitrogen vacancy sensor. And then for networking applications, we need to shift those wavelengths without the loss of the quantum information to telecoms compatible wavelengths, which is eminently doable using nonlinear frequency conversion. ADVR in particular have a background in manufacturing phase and amplitude modulators based on lithium niobate, which again, key components for use in ion trapping and atom cooling. And then what hasn't been mentioned much so far is photon generation. So getting sources, whether that's pair sources or single photon sources, that work at the required wavelengths. So whether you're generating entangled photon pairs for QKD type applications, or whether you're looking for photon pairs of different wavelengths, so that one can be used in a quantum memory or in a telecoms fiber, versus one being used for free space comms, perhaps up to a satellite. Everything that we do, we've been in business. Covesion's been in business for 20 years. We're not bootstrapped. We reinvest our commercial revenue. So everything that we do has to have the ability to generate product sales and commercial revenue for us. So the market pull is absolutely critical. So what I've tried to show on this slide is the two directions that we see the market pulling us. Moving to the top, from bottom right to top left, there's a requirement for some applications to have higher optical power. So whether you're looking at an intermediate solution where you're addressing a large qubit array and hence need high optical power, whether you're looking at rapid cycling of a rubidium atom interferometer for a accelerometer type application. So that pull drives you towards sort of the bulk end of a solution where you can handle higher optical power. You can efficiently couple that into fiber type components. In the opposite direction, obviously, you've got the desire for reduced swap, greater integration, more functionality at the chip level, and that pulls you down to photonic integrated circuits at the other corner of the slide. But between there are some intermediate technologies based on different methods of manufacturing waveguides, be that in a bulk crystal, a thick film type solution, thin film, or full photonic integration. So the intention for Covesion and ADVR is to have a range of products spanning as much as possible these two almost competing market pools. So
sorry, Stuart, just a quick reminder, is over 7 minutes. If you could expedite, I would appreciate that to go for the questions.
Absolutely. So just to finish then and summarize where we are in terms of covering that span of market pool. We've got everything from bottom right system level solutions, modules, and fiber coupled components to up top left, where we're starting to work on waveguide based chip devices that have on chip functionality, whether that's filters, WDMs, integrating heterogeneous materials through a combination of KTP based wavelength converters and silicon PICs. So just to ensure that we can do frequency conversion modulation right from chip level through to component and system level. Again, as previous presenters have mentioned, more than happy to talk about collaboration, what we can do for you, what you can do for us. Here's some contact details to finish with, or feel free to contact me directly. Apologies for overrunning.
No worries, Stuart. Thank you very much. These are all very great talks. I personally would love to give each of you more than 20 minutes, but I want to be mindful of also the question section segment that we have. And thank you again for all of the panelists for the wonderful talk. I'm going to share my slide again, and we're going to go through the round of questions, and then hopefully we can also address the question from audience right after or in the middle. I'll make sure to address that. Let me share the slides. So the first question, in context of photonic quantum computing, where the scalability is a key challenge, which integrated photonic components poses the most or more significant bottlenecks today, in your opinion? And how do these challenges compare in terms of their impact on a scaling quantum computer for neutral atom or trapped ion and photonic base? Stuart, if you want, I can start from you, that you had to wait a little bit for your presentation. Feel free to comment, and then we can just leave it open for everybody to participate. Go ahead, Stuart.
I think, to be honest, it would make sense for maybe one of the computing participants to comment at the starting point, and then I'm happy then to follow up as to how that impacts an enabling supplier or a component supplier.
Sure, absolutely. I just didn't want to make you to wait for all the questions. Nate, do you want to take a lead on this?
Great. Sorry.
Sure. No worries.
I will, although I will say that I am not an expert in photonic quantum computing. There are a lot of great ideas, great techniques out there for that. Scaling in a photonic computer, obviously the crucial thing there is just loss in materials, loss of interfaces, loss period, right? Because loss is decoherence. So, in neutral atom, trapped ion systems, where you are using photonics to scale, and that's not to say that say all trapped ion approaches really require scalable photonics. Usually the optical control does need to scale with the size of the system. Although you have to be really careful about what portion of the control has to scale. So in our case with the neutral atoms, when we started 5 years ago, we really thought that, for the most part, we would put the atoms in place and hold them in a fixed position throughout a computation. We didn't know how well it would work to move the atoms around, what the coherence, how well we could maintain coherence as we moved atoms around. Once you're able to move them, you can move them to a region that really contains a control beam. And that means that the optical pulses that you're delivering for electronic state control may not have to scale as much as if you left them in place. And that's a huge advantage, right? But now it does mean that also your ability to move the atoms, that does to some degree have to scale. right? So the balance of challenges there, kind of changes over time. And, that's a stressor for our component suppliers, right? We have to be able to spec a system and say, this is the type of modulation that we need, whether we need a scalable beam scanner or we need a scalable kind of gate modulation scheme. And so I think, it's a struggle for an industry to try to figure out how to coordinate in a landscape that has requirements that might change over time. But I will say that for photonic quantum computing, the challenges to scaling I would say, are in some ways much higher burden on the photonics industry to develop low loss materials and it's for that. But for our needs, for the most part, we just need telecom switchers that are either scanning a beam or switching a beam at the wavelengths that our atoms prefer.
Thank you. That's a great answer, Nate. Does anyone else wanted to add to Nate's comment? So certainly loss in material is one of the challenges. I'm glad that you brought it up, Nate. And actually in the follow-up questions, I brought it up because that's something that it appears a lot related for heterogeneous integration, or what material is basically optimal that for the integration of the for quantum computing's development. So I'm very glad that you mentioned, and also it's very good to know for the telecom switches and the scanning for the neutral trap atom base, that is very crucial and important for you.
Yeah,
I could add.
I would.
Oh, go.
Sorry.
Sorry. Well, I did see
Go ahead.
one question flash by that I could answer very quickly as well. There was a question about do we need cryogenics to operate the neutral atom computers? I'll answer that. No, we use laser cooling to cool the atoms. But I think it's also relevant to the question about PICs for photonics versus PICs for control of other qubits. Most photonic systems also need cryogenics for the photonics itself. And when we're controlling things like neutral atoms and ions with optical control, those styles of PICs and modulators obviously do not need cryogenics.
Yeah,
Thank you, Nate.
Speaking for
Go ahead, John.
we're trying to process single photons. So at that point, the loss becomes important. Our PICs probably will need to be cryogenically cooled in the final application, because we need to put the highest efficiency detectors on chip. So yeah, I think for me the component would be the low loss cryogenic capable fiber couplers is probably the bottleneck for us in terms of performance and loss.
John, also one question from our audience was regarding a material that new quantum with a thin film lithium niobate versus silicon nitride or nitride. Could you comment on that regarding the integration with the material choice for your PICs?
Yeah, of course. So silicon nitride is a really good material for doing a lot of things, and obviously has the same sort of wavelength flexibility. We think quite hard about where we could use it in our system. And yeah, of course, it can handle a lot more power than lithium niobate, and the cost is also a big factor. The reason we need to use thin film lithium niobate is because although our attempt rate is 1 megahertz, we need to do a lot inside of that microsecond. So our switches actually need to be quite a lot faster than that, and more towards the gigahertz class, which puts us in the electro-optic regime. And also we want to try and avoid dumping too much power into the cryostat, which really also pushes us in the direction of using electro-optic modulators. And that, taken together with the need for loss and the requirement to operate at the ion wavelength, pushes us strongly in the direction of thin film lithium niobate for us.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, John. I have also multiple questions I want to also keep in mind about the time. Does anybody else wanted to add to Nate and John's feedback? Adam, Thomas, Stuart? All right. So I'm going to go forward because I want to make sure that we're going to go through a broad range of the topics. In the realm of quantum sensing, PICs promises to dramatically reduce the size, as also our panelists mentioned that over their slide and presentation, basically size, weight, and power. Beyond miniaturization, what is the most significant performance challenge that integrated photonic must solve to move the quantum sensor from laboratory to real-world applications, such as areas for GPS-denied navigation or portable for medical imaging? I would love to hear your thoughts as the topics that here comes along, but it would be very good to know from both manufacturing side and also development. What is your thought? Feel free to take it, anyone.
I mean, I think I'll dive in here. I mean, quantum sensors, you think about being field deployed, perhaps operating in harsh environments, these kinds of things. And I think that making a robust system that can handle shock and vibe, large temperature swings, and so on, could be a challenge. And I think it was John that mentioned earlier, in particular, you can do a lot of nice things on a PIC, but light always has to come off of the PIC or get onto the PIC somehow. And that is often a point of failure, particularly in environments with, well, it's often a point of failure in lab conditions. And I think that problem becomes exacerbated if you have shock and vibe or wide temperature swings.
I completely echo Adam's comment there that getting the light on and off chip, because you're always going to have to do that, is I see as a challenge, and controlling the light appropriately so that you have low loss, you have mode matching, you have polarization control, all of those things that a sensor or something like that will need. It's really important. So I mean, it's interesting to see things like photonic wire bonding being developed, but I still see challenges with them in terms of things like polarization control.
Yeah, and visible wavelengths also.
Absolutely.
Thomas, can you add to that, especially with the focus of the light integration technologies? I think would be interesting to also hear your thoughts on Adam and Stuart's feedback.
Yeah, I can't do more than really echo that. A lot of the programs that we work on, that's a major focus, is developing sources that have control and stability, especially in harsh environments. The wavelengths that require operation for quantum applications typically involves aluminum-containing materials, and so then engineering, even at the materials level, aluminum-free devices in the active and waveguide regions is a big push. So just operation in harsh environments is a big focus from our collaborators.
Yeah, that's great to know. Thank you. Thanks, John. Does anybody want to add more comments and feedback, their thoughts regarding the low swap and the challenges?
I mean, I just want to echo that, we concentrate on the innovation on the integrated photonics end of things quite a bit, but the innovations in packaging are probably equally important. And I think that's, what all of the panelists said. And I just want to underscore that, because I think that we're probably underinvested in solving the packaging challenge.
Certainly, Nate. Glad that you brought it up, and is of course is like as equally as important for both addressing the loss that happens during integration, but also the final packaging integration for delivering the light out. Very glad that you echoed that. Thank you, Nate. All right. So if there's no more question, I wanted to go forward. How is the foundry model adapting to the unique demand of quantum technologies, in your opinion? Are current PDKs and standard cell libraries sufficient for quantum applications for quantum computing and quantum sensing, or do we need fundamental shift in our foundry customer relationship to co-develop the highly customized and sensitive component required for this field? What was your experience? What kind of recommendation that you have? That's something that I believe many of also founders that would love to hear your comments as both developer and manufacturers.
I mean, I commented during my slides on the potential integration advantages of PICs, and in particular talked about how at some point, everyone has to design their own thing and then put everything together. And I think that could potentially best happen at a foundry, where a foundry has some PDK of components from various entities. As far as I know right now, most foundries have, they'll do a good job of giving you a pretty decent Y splitter or tunable filter or something like this. But usually the components you can get in a PIC foundry PDK are not, they're at the component level on the PIC itself, like a splitter or something like this. And also in my experience, at least what we've done here at Toptica, we like to have a lot of control over our design of pretty much everything. So that's kind of a long way of saying that I don't think that we're using many of the things that you can find in a foundry PDK when we're doing our own designs. We wanted to design every little interface, everything that we're doing. That said, there are some funded programs in the US and in Europe that are driving towards sort of this quantum foundry model where there are, quantum, you could say, subsystems that are developed on chip. The CHIPS Act funded the Microelectronics Commons Hubs program, which the quantum component does have a sort of a quantum foundry level thing. And I think Europe has a similar program. I think I saw something called QPICs in Europe that was doing something similar. So I think that people are starting to address this problem and trying to make these foundries more useful at a higher systems level approach.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Adam, for comment. I totally agree, and I would definitely like also to hear Nate and John's experience in this field, especially with the whole integration at the custom design that for a variety of applications, Adam, you mentioned, requires a lot of customizations and not necessarily providing the specific components for PICs integration.
Yeah, maybe I can start on this. So yeah, co-development is about right, I think. So of course we can't use a lot of the PDK components that are available simply because they are often optimized for telecom wavelengths to begin with, which isn't where we're operating. So we want to have the flexibility. So we want to own and understand the design ourselves. But of course, the foundry is best placed to understand how to use their process most effectively and how we could optimize things like component level loss, or if we're seeing performance issues, how we could go about modifying our designs to suit that. And that's a co-development kind of a project. And that's just for sort of your sort of classic set of photonics components. For things that are more quantum specific, like single photon detectors, I think there's a good question over how that should happen, whether that's something that could happen within traditional PIC foundries, or whether that's a kind of back-end of line process that would be post-processing on foundry PICs, and same for other kinds of components you might think about integrating on your chips, like lasers and photon sources and all of that stuff as well.
John. Thomas, Stuart, Nate, do you have any comments to add to this? I know it's a very important topic, but I want to make sure that everybody is share their opinion before moving to the next question.
Yeah, I do want to jump in and just remind everyone that this is a really rapidly evolving industry, right? The processes and techniques and platforms that we're talking about are relatively new. So there is a lot of experimentation and R&D that's going on in the processing, as we are trying to consume and use it as a service. And I think we have to keep in mind that those PDKs, they have a lifetime to them, before processes are changed. And we're also seeing, major semiconductor industry players starting to adopt the integrated photonics processes and techniques that are developed, sometimes at the universities or the national laboratories. And as they start to adopt that, the volume of a product that they can create goes way up. And we could use that volume for two things. We could either literally start to manufacture things at scale. I don't think that the industry is really ready to consume devices at that scale. So the other thing that we can use it for is to do faster experimentation, better optimization, those types of things. And the PDKs really should lock in faster as we do that. So I think, for many of the technologies, we're at different phases. Some of them are very mature. They're really ready to be applied to many different problems and scale up. PDKs are robust and mature. But for others, we're handing it off between, places that are really research and development powerhouses into the kind of commercial application space. And as we do that transition, the PDKs are really an important part of that. we have to work as a community and as a team and industry to try to get it through that early commercialization phase. And working together on PDKs is a really good example of a place that we can work together to accelerate the industry takeoff.
Thank you, Nate.
Just off the back of Nate's comment, I think I'm going to be really interested to see how the business model develops for these PIC foundries working in new materials such as thin film lithium niobate, and whether they can survive with in-house PDKs and work as a pure play foundry, or whether they're going to have some level of vertical integration, their own product stream to generate that revenue to survive, and to see what consolidation occurs across the industry. Coming from a compound semiconductor background, I've seen the difficulty in scaling compound semi foundries to what is achievable with silicon, and it feels like thin film lithium niobate and things like that are then a step back from that again. So yeah, it's a very immature business at the moment.
Yeah, I hear you, and it's great to actually get this feedback from both on the status of you guys that you have also overlap with the European foundries, and also the same sort of experience sometimes happens at the US, and related also to activities such as CHIPS Act. Actually, I have a follow-up question that Adam brought up, so I would definitely love to get your thoughts and feedback to see what programs can also help to that development and address the current challenges. If there's no more feedback and thought, I would love to move forward. So beyond building a universal quantum computer, what do you consider the most promising near-term? What do you consider the most promising near-term quantum applications for PICs? Would it be a specialized quantum simulator for drug discovery, a secure quantum computing networking, or basically a highly sensitive chip-scale magnetometer? What is your thought regarding some of these area and implementations of the photonic integrated quantum-based systems?
I mean, I'll jump in, but I think that there's a lot of innovation that has to happen for quantum computing in particular, and I would say quantum networking as well, and quantum communication. They're all in the same boat, and building smaller scale systems that aren't necessarily able to achieve utility yet does have a certain kind of pre-utility utility in the sense that all of these devices require some degree of innovation when you use the technology itself. So obviously a quantum computer, I could make you a quantum computer that was useful right now, but the reality is you wouldn't know how to use it, right? So, I mean, even if I could advance the hardware very quickly, there's a degree of use innovation that's got to happen along the way. So I think there is, for each of these technologies, an equivalent argument. For a quantum computer, it's easy to see because we don't have quantum programmers. How are they going to learn how to do things in practical ways on real computers? But for quantum sensors, for communication networks as well, there's a certain degree of innovation that happens just when you use the parts and you start putting them together. So I imagine, John, I don't know if it's part of New Quantum's business model exactly, but you guys are building quantum networking units, right? It's a combination of some linear optics that are combining beams and then basically coming together to make a Bell state analyzer together with a single photon detector. That's a really useful device for a lot of different applications, but you could use it in lots of different ways, right? And building up networks with different topologies in classical networking, obviously requires a lot of innovation about how you put the systems together from the parts. Right. So, I think that the reality is we're kind of bootstrapping an industry here where there's a lot that we have to learn. It certainly starts from hardware innovation where we start making the parts, and these PICs really, are about the part making. But at a higher level, how you start to assemble all of those devices also matters. So I think we need to kind of accelerate that development as much as we can by producing good parts, getting them out into the industry fast enough to be able to put bigger projects together to enable that use innovation to happen. So I think that's, my answer to what can we do short of building useful quantum devices or quantum technology is we can bootstrap the industry by arming ourselves with enough hardware to start the experimentation of use.
Yeah, certainly, Nate. It's a very great point. And especially with the use cases that you mentioned, like new quantum mentioned. John, do you have anything to add to Nate's comment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the sensing application is in many ways closest to being realized in a useful sense and probably used a lot of the same technology. So that's great to be able to create a bit of a pool for some of these technologies. I think, yeah, that like you said, there's a lot of uses that aren't computing for a lot of what we're developing. And actually a lot of these same technologies go into a lot of the enabling technologies for computing systems as well. So like we were hearing from Adam about miniaturized narrow alignment lasers with cavities integrated on chip. Those will be useful for lots of things, but they will also help to accelerate building quantum computing systems because they should be smaller, lower power, and lower cost, and all of those things will really help with getting to quantum computing. So yeah, I think my short answer would be sensing is super exciting for near-term applications, and yeah, hopefully lots of other things that we can use to generate more of an industry around PIC for quantum.
Thanks, John. Yeah, certainly. I'm very glad that we saw during the presentations highlighting the importance for integration of the low-salt cases of PICs for sensing and broad applications for the field and the field deployability. Does anyone else, Adam, Stuart, Thomas, have anything to add to that before we move to the next question?
Well, at the risk of suggesting it's not a sensor, but it's timing. It's timing has got to be the nearest term application for a quantum system. And what Adam was hinting at in terms of small swap, high performance laser source. So if you can target that at rubidium, calcium, whatever you're performing your frequency measurement on, then that's we see that as the lowest hanging fruit out there for real commercial sales.
And
Thanks, Stuart. Go ahead, Thomas.
Thomas here. I just echo what John and Stuart just brought up. I mean, from an early stage startup point of view, those are the most near term applications. I mean, all of the excitement and venture money is in quantum computing, and then that's where we plan. That's what we're developing towards as we move into a seed stage startup. But at this stage, performing on contracts, everything that we do is generally for atomic clocks and sensing PICs for position, navigation, and timing. So yeah, it just seems like those are the most near-term applications that we're getting interest for.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to also make sure a quick look at also a question from our audience. There was a question related to the metrics. In your opinion, is there a single metric among respective PICs development regarding the parameterize and other things that can be associated also to relative cost of the PICs development? What kind of metrics do you consider? And I guess this kind of question more toward the standards metrics. That is it already something that is in your opinion too early to develop it, or is it something that is safe to say that you can consider some sort of a standard metrics?
I'll jump in. QuEra is really a system builder, right? We build quantum computers out of lots of parts. And it's, I would say that the industry is starting to get mature enough that we can start talking about standardizing our requirements. And I think if you think about how long it takes to get, say, a laser technology off of paper onto the bench, tested, verified, built, and turned into a product, that is enough of a commitment for a supply chain component provider and enough risk associated with that. And Saeed, I think you're nodding because we had this discussion about 4 or 5 years ago about how important it is for system builders like QuEra to be able to specify what they need and be able to stay on a path for long enough for the vendors to be able to deliver. And also how to balance the risk. not just to whoever, has to create that foundry or fab or process, that creates that component, but also to the system builders that are specifying those in the first place. Like, how do you actually make that a legitimate risk for everybody to kind of balance and take on? So I think standardization is the tool to be able to do that. The quantum industry is new, and it's got a long way to go. There's a lot of innovation. We will certainly change our ways along the way. But I do not think that it's too soon for us to start creating standards that really start to balance that risk out. When you create a standard, you require a system integrator to really sit down and lay out its specifications in a way that it can stick with for some time. And I think that that's absolutely critical for the whole ecosystem to be able to make progress. And that whole supply chain is really a chain. There's linkage, between the parts of the chain. Unless we start doing this, we are really going to be kind of at the whims of component makers that have to look at a broad range of possible buyers of a technology for them to be able to make anything at all. And I think that that can slow us down, that can lock us down, and it certainly keeping apertures very, very wide for product development has a certain cost associated with it because those specifications are really just very wide and hard to deal with. So I think absolutely we need to be developing standards. QED-C is an excellent place for us to be doing that, to have that discussion. But I think it's critical for all of us to survive and thrive.
Yeah, exactly, Nate. Totally agree. And that's something that I wanted to also bring in that you already mentioned, and related kind of platforms like QED-C that through either like connecting the developer and manufacturing side and vice versa. That's something that certainly helped to understand the requirements better and to set the grounds in terms of what are the needs, what are the standards path that basically allows for faster development. Very good, good comments. Anybody else wanted to add to the question related to the Nate pretty much like provide a very comprehensive and interesting answer. All right. If not, I will go forward. When comparing the material platform, I know we also touch on it, but I think it still is important. Where do you see the dividing line? Is there a future where a material like silicon nitride or thin film lithium niobate dominates for both quantum computing and sensor, or will we require a hybrid approach, leveraging the best material for each specific need, like a PIC-based lasers and so on? Kind of like could tell the answers already from your comments, but if you could briefly provide feedback, I appreciate that.
I mean, I can jump in here. So already some foundries offer wafers that have a layer stack where you can have silicon nitride or silicon or some electro-optic materials at different layers, and they provide some foundry PDK components that allow you to transition your light from one layer to another and so on. And I think that if that works out, then I think that gives you the best of all worlds, right? If you need an electro-optic modulator, you can use a thin film lithium niobate layer. But if you just want low loss waveguides, you go back to silicon nitride or something like this. But I hadn't really thought about Stuart's comment earlier in the electronics space. These, I don't even remember the term, but everyone has sort of standardized around silicon at some cost, I'm sure, to performance of some components, but with the advantage of standardization and this kind of thing. And I wonder how that will evolve in this foundry space.
Yeah, good question, Adam. That's something that it's everybody is actually very wondering how that development and the path for foundries, and they will try to update and change their development. Any more comments to Adam's feedback?
I think in some ways it's going to depend how the process and production technology develops. So can you start moving to things like pick and place almost as as subcomponents, so different materials pick and placed onto a an underlying substrate, things like that. Nano imprint lithography, things like this. What methods can be developed for the materials we've talked about here? The nonlinear, combining nonlinear materials with waveguide materials, with modulator materials. Can you do that on a single underlying substrate by using things like pick and place or nano imprint?
I mean, from
Yeah,
my point, I like to play with optics and photonics, and all these things do such wonderfully different things, right? And as an atomic physicist, I would hate to see, any of these processes or material platforms atrophy or be less useful. So, is there a place for like BTO? Absolutely, I think so. Is there a place for silicon nitride? I think so. I give you a very different answer if you talked about like there's a mirror question that you could ask about, should we keep a wide aperture for qubit type in a quantum computer or narrow it up? I actually give a completely different answer for that. I think we should narrow that one up. But the underlying base technologies that are really enabling computing to happen, I think we should keep that aperture wide because that enables our innovation, our creativity and engine to really take off. And I think that there is a place for these different technologies. I mean, they're very different in what they can achieve for different types of optical modulation, speed, and conversion, and so forth. And I think just, as a person who loves to play in this technology space, I would like to see as many tools as possible, as many instruments, in our orchestra as we possibly can draw on. But at the same time, I think that to be practical, we do have to narrow up our ambitions, and I would narrow it up at the top, actually.
good point. Good point, Nate. Somebody else want to add comment? John, Thomas?
Sure. Yeah, I think again, really to echo that probably there's a diverse enough range of things we're trying to do in quantum technologies that it's unlikely one material system will be able to even begin to do all of this. And then I think it's whether hybrid integration on one chip is what we're trying to do, which may sometimes be the case. I think quantum is great because you get to play around with all these different technologies. And it's also terrible on the single photon side because you can't really tolerate any loss, which also limits what you can do actually on that side quite a lot. But of course, different parts of the system could be built out completely out of different materials. So on the drive side, optics is likely to be very different requirements to the sort of routing and detection side. And those are highly likely to be made of different materials. And that's a really great place to have that diversity of choosing the best thing for the job.
Certainly. And I think I'll also add into that, really like as the whole like field, it requires a lot of optimizations and development, having as more essential and the key components on these chips that allows any developer to play and constantly improve and enhance if they're all trapping atom, trapping ion, so on and so forth, various areas that provide very, very unique niche applications and the use case for quantum computing development that hopefully in the near future we can see and address that. So I want to go back to also one of the topics brought up, Adam was mentioning earlier, with significant government investment following from initiatives like CHIPS and Science Act. How should the funding be prioritized to best accelerate the US quantum ecosystem? Should the focus be establishing dedicated quantum foundries, funding fundamental material research development, or creating shared testbed facility to validate new quantum devices? I forgot to mention, maybe I should have said like all above. So what is your thought?
I mean, so I'm going to go first. I'm going to say
Go
all
ahead.
the. I mean, you hit it on the nail at the end. I think that you need to think about the ecosystem in quantum technologies in a little bit the way that a technologist thinks about like hardware, right? When we design a system, oftentimes we make it out of parts that we try to make modular and composable, right? Certainly, if you're writing computer code, you think about that a lot, right? Can I reuse a function? You should be thinking about that also when you design industries and businesses and companies, right? And the CHIPS Act, in some ways, is meant to really foster an entire ecosystem of technology developers to be successful. The government has one role. Clearly, that kind of fostering idea should make sense. Now, foundries and PICs is a really great place where we can, pull out of that kind of toolkit from the microelectronics industry, and we can think about how we organize companies around that kind of foundry model. And that's absolutely wonderful. It's composable and all of those things. But since you've talked about different types of investments all the way up to the top, including shared testbed facilities, I do think that we should do those things, but we should also think about how those compose with different types of companies and different players in different sectors. And then we should also be thinking globally as well. The Chips and Science Act certainly is fostering US excellence in these things. But I would love for Stuart to be a big part of that. And I think that the Chips and Science Act also has to think about how the US fits into a global ecosystem as well.
Yeah, great point, Nate. Yeah, I would like also to hear John or Nate's opinion, also being from companies founded in UK base. What is your thought, and how would you guys foresee for integrating food activities for Chip and Science Act in the US?
I think I'm going to answer this by saying that maybe testbed facilities and government investment in research is an important way of maybe building partnerships and getting kind of a pull to get companies working together, or get companies working together with academia to maybe pull some technologies that we need closer to applications, or to test out stuff that doesn't have a commercial application yet, but is a really important proof point along the way to getting there. So I think testbed facilities is a super important and interesting part of that kind of activity.
Thank you, John. Adam, Thomas, Stuart, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, Thomas here. I'd just echo some of what he said with being a photonics expert myself, but not really an expert in quantum systems. I rely heavily on our collaborations with NIST, NASA, industry players who have testbed capabilities. I think that me personally, we would benefit a lot from shared testbed facilities that could standardize device characterization and performance analysis with regards to the quantum application space.
That's good. Great to know. Thanks, Thomas. And that's something that actually we also try to add as a prioritization for some of the reports coming out from the enabling technology tags. I'll make sure that to highlight it, and I think would be very interesting for you guys.
I want to throw
Can I just
comment.
Sorry, I was just.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Nate. Sorry, I was just going to throw a quick one in there, and in terms of where should funding be spent? Can I just say, place orders, get government place orders for systems that stimulates the system integrator to deliver, stimulates the component supply chain, everything. So place some orders.
I mean, kind of in that vein, my comment on this topic is going to be but the only thing I see that might be missing here is sort of a grand challenge. I mean, Europe does these quantum flagship programs where they say, deliver us, a 10 to the minus whatever optical clock or something like that, which is in the same vein as what Stuart's talking about here. But the government's the customer for something that, you want to see if it's even possible to do something like that. So I think the US now, these NSF National Quantum Virtual Laboratories, I think, are kind of in that vein also. So maybe the US is starting to follow the European lead there on these flagship problems. But I think that's a nice addition too.
I would call it, DARPA has been very innovative with its programs recently. One of the most innovative ones is the quantum benchmarking program.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which, I mean, is in many ways a grand challenge program. But I do want to say that, for those of us who are, part of that program, we all have suppliers in a supply chain. And, I sometimes I call this the trickle down theory of supply chain, which is that if you want to stimulate a supply chain, you have two choices. You can either do grand challenges at system level, or you can start to try to inject at the side of that supply chain, all the way up and down the ladder, and define grand challenges in the supply chain itself. And I think actually there's need for both of those things to happen. I do want to point out, there are a lot of DARPA programs out there. Another DARPA program that doesn't get talked about a lot is the OASIC program. This is really literally a testbed program that's meant to confront the testing bottleneck for components. And I think that this is a really important innovation also coming out of DARPA at the program level, is directly funding the interactions between companies rather than just the companies themselves. And I think we could use a little bit more of that, just direct stimulation of coordination and collaboration between companies in the supply chain, making sure that they're confronting the bottlenecks that they have. And I think in testing and validation, is literally one of the biggest ones. And I think that actually there's a lot of latent value in the components that have been developed to enable quantum technologies to take off that haven't been demonstrated to actually function in working systems. And I think if we could really confront that kind of testing bottleneck, we might see that we've actually created quite a bit of value that we just haven't realized yet. And that latent value creation, I think that should be good for everybody.
Certainly, Nate. Very good point, and I'm glad that you brought it up. We spoke before, and I was certainly, if anybody also from our panel and also like audience also interested to learn more, make sure that touch base with Nate too regarding about OASIC or like other DARPA benchmarking testbeds, which is very, very interesting and crucial for the development. Anybody else wanted to add or add more comments? I wanted to also make sure that like basically keep in mind about the time. So I wanted to go, I think there's two more just questions. I would jump one question so to the last one. The quantum industry requires a unique blend of expertise. So what is the most critical gap we need to address in workforce development? Is the training physicists to think like engineer, training engineers in the principle of quantum mechanics, or cultivating of a new generation of technician skilled in a fabrication and testing of quantum photonic devices? So I definitely love to hear your feedback, because that's also another kind of main critical components for this whole PICs development and integration for both developer and manufacturer side. Feel free to take it away, anyone.
So we talk about a lot about workforce, but we don't talk a lot about culture. And there's this phrase that I can never remember which it is. It's either culture eats strategy for breakfast or strategy eats culture for breakfast. The fact that I can't remember which is which, I think, is because I believe that you need a strategy for culture. And I think workforce development is actually a lot more about culture than it is about training and education. Like when we talk about workforce, we often talk about curricula, right? Who is teaching what at what institution, right? Should these be R1 universities? Should these be technical schools, et cetera? And I think that those are really important conversations, and we definitely need to get those programs, started. Their turnaround time is probably, I don't know, 6 years to train somebody effectively through some of those programs. So very certainly we need to kick those things off. But I think as we do it, we need to understand that over the course of these disciplines of like engineering and science and physicist and chemist and electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, while it's been helpful to define those things to make good curricula and workforce training programs, it also has cemented subcultures within each of those disciplines. And your question right here is really about breaking down these walls that we've created over the long history of those training programs. Once these people get into the companies, you do see these differences in culture, and they really do matter quite a bit. So I think one of the things that we might, as we are thinking about quantum technologies, we might reassess how we think about workforce training in general as a nation, as a world, and really like start to think about those cultural aspects. How do these disciplines integrate together? Where are we teaching that? How are we utilizing that so that once we get these small teams put together that really have to cover a lot of distance fast, that culture is its own strategy.
Certainly. A great point, Nate. I'm glad that you brought it up. I haven't thought that detail myself, but it's certainly, now that you mention it, it totally makes sense. The culture and with the workforce and team development is super crucial. I wanted to hear others also comment. I remember also like Thomas, you were promoting for your company and basically the roles. What is your thoughts? What challenges that you face, maybe your company, regarding workforce acquiring and basically about the kind of cultivating the new generation and the technicians for PICs development?
Oh, hey. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't answer better than Nathan. Then really our perspective is aligned on that. Like we're not really searching for an expert in something very specific for our program that we need. It's more about the culture, how curious is this person? How much of a doer are they? People can be cross-trained pretty quickly if they have certain characteristics about their personality. And so that's what we're building. Unfortunately, those kinds of people are in really high demand. And so so I have to pretty much invest everything back into the company, but I'm building at this point and glad to do so. And we're hiring, so everybody please reach out. We're trying to build a team of the best in Santa Barbara and Seattle, and it's a lot about the culture.
Thank you, Thomas. We're glad to hear it. And anybody else? Adam, John, Stuart, you want to add to that?
Sure. I
Jim,
mean,
I'm sorry,
Stuart, go ahead.
Just to say, as a relatively small company, it's not the quantum that's the important word. It's the photonics word, or it's even actually just having a really strong STEM background. As people have already mentioned, we can cross train, we can retrain. It's having that good underpinning science culture, if you like. So that's what we're looking for. And as already been said, yeah, they can be super hard to find, and it can be a super competitive market.
Thank you, Stuart. John, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I think the first point of training physicists to think like engineers, I mean, it is kind of a cultural point really as well. And yeah, having people who understand possibilities of PIC for quantum, but are really comfortable with working with what are basically engineering workflows, with sort of standardizing design and verification, that kind of thing, and producing and interacting with other people in a way that works for engineering is really important. So being able to boil down things into specs and like I say, work with standardized workflows and all of that kind of stuff is super important. And yeah, I think probably on the technician side as well. I mean, yeah, obviously essential to realizing the technology at scale. Engineering technicians, test and measurement, packaging engineers, all of that stuff is really needed.
Hey, John, very, very important, and I hope that whomever is basically the transitioning from academic environment to industry, or just basically industry into industry in the future, see these recordings, because I personally find this also feedback from industry expert as equally as important, and our technical aspects regarding the development and the direction that the field is going. Thank you so much. So that was a very, very great feedback. So I think that's pretty much summarize our question and answer. I want to thank you all our panelists one more time again, and thank you for staying a little bit longer for the last segment of our discussion. I wanted to make sure to kind of highlight the link for the Quantum Marketplace in about 2 weeks or so. The recording will be available on YouTube channel and also on the Quantum Marketplace of the QED-C. As I said earlier, so this year I'm a chair of Enabling Technologies TAC. Make sure if you're not a member, join and become a member. We would have a virtual workshop on quantum sensing that in effort to be the use case tag we are planning to do in the following months. So make sure you keep track of it and also become a member. For anybody who want to also learn more about the company Toptica that actually I'm part of, and is pretty much, as Nate mentioned, it feels like a family for us. Learn more, check out the link below or the YouTube channels. They're very interesting information there. And feel free to reach out to us if you come up with any questions. Thank you again, and hope you all have a great day.